What if I told you that everything you believe about your story is wrong? That the lack of love in your childhood, the thing you spent years seeing as your curse, your fatal flaw, the reason you struggle to fit into relationships or fully trust anyone, what if none of that was a defect, but an invitation? It sounds crazy, right? But stay with me. While the world teaches you to see yourself as a victim, to carry this wound like an eternal burden, there is a much more powerful and uncomfortable truth waiting to be revealed, and it will completely turn upside down what you think you know about trauma, healing, and purpose. The truth is, everyone loves to talk about self-healing and moving on from the past, but very few people are brave enough to say the obvious. Most people would rather stay comfortable in their pain than do the hard work of rebuilding themselves. It's easier to blame parents, childhood, or circumstances, and don't get me wrong, the pain is real. It hurts deeply. But there's a huge difference between acknowledging a wound and marrying it for the rest of your life. And here's what no one tells you. The child who didn't receive love was not broken. They were shaped, refined, prepared for a journey of consciousness that most people will never have the courage to face. In this video, you'll discover how your brain adapted to that absence, how the patterns you repeat today are echoes of that time, and, most importantly, how to use all of this not as an excuse, but as fuel for deep internal change. Change that can move you from surviving to becoming the main character of your own story. This is not about forgetting what happened, it's about turning poison into medicine, wounds into wisdom, and finally understanding that the most powerful sign of awakening often comes from the pain that almost destroyed you. Ready? You know that feeling that something was missing back in childhood, and that it still echoes inside you? When a child grows up without feeling genuine love, without that kind of embrace that calms the soul, it's not just emotional sadness, it's as if the brain itself is shaped differently, tuned to survival instead of growth. This is one of the most ignored signs of spiritual awakening, realizing that the deep inner changes you're experiencing today didn't start yesterday, but decades ago, when your heart was still learning how to beat in rhythm with the world. A child's brain is like fresh modeling clay, it shapes itself according to the experiences it receives. When warmth, affection, and true presence are missing, the neural pathways related to safety and trust don't fully develop the way they should. It's like building a house without a solid foundation. You can live in it, yes, but every strong wind feels more threatening than it needs to. And this is where a quiet inner journey begins, one where the soul must relearn what it was never taught, that it deserves love, that it has value, that it can trust. This is not your fault. It's important to understand that right away. This is a biological and spiritual process intertwined, where body and soul respond to the emotional environment around them. Many people call this trauma, but it may be more accurate to see it as a sign of awakening, an opportunity to rebuild, to rewrite a neurological and spiritual story that was written without your consent. And it's in this realization that the seed of true emotional and spiritual healing is planted, understanding that what shaped you does not have to define you forever. Imagine a child trying to scream in silence, waving to someone who never looks back. That's the portrait of someone who grows up without the warmth of love, physically present, but emotionally invisible, as if existing on a plane no one else can see. And what happens next? That child starts creating stories about themselves. I'm not important, I have to earn love, something is wrong with me. These narratives cling to the soul like invisible tattoos, marking the beginning of a journey where consciousness activation is still dormant, waiting for the right moment to wake up. What's most striking is that this lack of emotional validation doesn't just create sadness, it shapes the way a child learns to feel and express emotions. It's like being given a piano without ever being taught the notes. You know the instrument is there, but you don't know how to make music with it. Many of these children grow up unable to name what they feel, swinging between emotional outbursts and total shutdown, because no one showed them there was a middle path. And this is where the fertile ground is formed for what many call soul purpose, a deep need to find meaning in what once seemed meaningless. This entire process is not the child's fault, nor is it a weakness, it's pure adaptation, an intelligent response from the brain trying to survive in an emotionally barren environment. The body learns to stay on constant alert, like a soldier who never leaves the trenches, always expecting the next abandonment, the next rejection. And while all of this is happening on a physical and psychological level, something on a spiritual level is also moving, even if silently, because every pain carries within it the seed of spiritual evolution, even if it takes us years to recognize it. That little boy or little girl who didn't receive love doesn't disappear when adulthood arrives. They remain there, hidden between the lines of every relationship, every decision, every fear. That's why so many adults feel a strange, lingering anguish. They sense that something doesn't flow, that love always seems to slip through their fingers, yet they can't quite understand where that feeling comes from. The truth is that patterns repeat themselves, almost like a program running quietly in the background, and what looks like bad luck in love is actually a reflection of deep internal changes that began long ago, when the heart was still small and defenseless. Experts talk about attachment styles, anxious, avoidant, disorganized, but translated into real life, it looks like this: the person who clings too tightly and smothers, terrified of being left, or the one who runs from intimacy as if it were a deadly threat, or the one who swings between both extremes, trapped in an emotional back and forth that exhausts even themselves. These are not character flaws, they are strategies the soul created to protect itself in a world that once felt hostile. And when someone begins to recognize these patterns, something powerful happens. The rebirth of the soul starts to pulse, still shy, but undeniably present, because naming the wound is the first step toward healing it. But there's another side of this story that few people talk about: the brutal difficulty of trusting, not only others, but oneself. It's as if the person lives with an internal alarm that's always on, interpreting gestures of affection as traps, reading meanings between the lines that were never written. Relationships become minefields, friendships stay shallow, and loneliness, even when surrounded by people, becomes a constant companion. None of this happens by chance. It's the brain trying to protect the heart from reliving an old pain, without realizing that in doing so, it ends up creating exactly the scenario it fears most. We look in the mirror and see a face, but behind it there is a voice, the inner voice that narrates your life, comments on every step, every choice. For those who grew up without love, that voice is rarely kind. It repeats a cruel mantra recorded in childhood: you don't matter, no one will stay, you're too broken to be truly loved. These beliefs aren't just passing thoughts, they become the foundation of identity, the filter through which a person sees themselves and the world. And the most frightening part? They feel so real, so true, that it doesn't even cross the mind to question whether they are simply stories told by a wounded child trying to make sense of chaos. Psychologists call this internal working models, essentially, mental templates about who you are and how others will treat you. When these templates are formed in the absence of love, they come out distorted, tilted toward distrust, fear, and self-sabotage. It's like carrying the wrong map your entire life and wondering why you never reach the right destination. And here lies one of the clearest signs of spiritual awakening: the moment you realize that this map is not absolute truth, it's just an interpretation, a version of the story that can be rewritten through deep spirituality and a genuine connection with yourself. This distorted self-perception seeps into everything: at work, where the person feels they must prove their worth every single moment; in relationships, where any criticism becomes proof of their own inadequacy; even in solitude, where being alone with themselves feels too heavy to bear. It's like living with a smudged lens, where everything you see about yourself is a warped shadow of who you truly are. And while that lens isn't cleaned, the person keeps repeating the same cycles, attracting the same situations, because deep down, even when it hurts, the familiar feels more comfortable than the unknown, even when the familiar is toxic. There's a saying that goes, you don't choose who you love, you recognize them. And for many people who grew up without affection, that recognition is deceptive, because what the heart recognizes isn't healthy love, but that familiar coldness, that emotional distance they've known since childhood. It's frightening to realize this. The person swears they want someone present, caring, emotionally available, but when they actually meet someone like that, something inside pulls back, feels uneasy, as if it's too good to be true. And then, almost automatically, they end up choosing emotionally unavailable partners, friends who disappear when things get hard, replaying the old script, because at least it's a script they know, and in the chaos of life, what's familiar always seems safer. This repetition isn't stupidity or a lack of self-love, it's the brain trying to solve an old problem with the tools it has. It's as if the person were stuck in an emotional time loop, trying to save that wounded child through adult relationships that recreate the same pain. This time it will be different, they think. This time I'll finally make this person love me for real. But the ending is already written, because you can't heal old wounds with new people who carry the same toxic patterns. And it's precisely in this repetitive cycle that the opportunity for inner transformation lies, when the person finally gets tired of hitting a wall and asks themselves, what if the problem isn't me, but the choices I keep making? And this doesn't show up only in romantic relationships, it spills into everything. The person develops survival strategies that eventually become their personality: perfectionism to earn approval, a constant smile even when the heart is bleeding, or that whatever attitude so no one notices how much they actually care. Some become self-sacrificing heroes, always saving others and forgetting themselves. Others build walls so high that nothing gets through. These are defense mechanisms, emotional armor that once served a purpose but now only block true connection, the kind that heals, that nourishes, that allows the soul to be reborn through genuine vulnerability. Here's the part that changes everything. The brain isn't a rock, it's more like living clay, flexible, capable of reorganizing itself until the very last breath. Science calls this neuroplasticity, but translated to the heart, it means you don't have to carry forever the marks of what you lacked in childhood. Of course, the path isn't easy, fast, or linear, but it's possible, and that possibility alone is revolutionary. When someone truly understands this, something inside awakens. It's as if a door locked for decades finally receives the right key, and on the other side there's a world where emotional and spiritual healing isn't just theory, but a tangible reality. Therapy, especially approaches focused on attachment and trauma, works like a laboratory where you can finally learn the lessons you never received in childhood, that it's safe to trust, that vulnerability isn't weakness, that you can make mistakes and still be worthy of love. It's like going back to school, except this time the subject is you, and the teacher is someone trained to help you dismantle those toxic beliefs brick by brick. Alongside this, practices like meditation and mindfulness teach you to observe your patterns without drowning in them. You learn to watch the thought, "no one loves me," pass through your mind without blindly believing it, like watching a cloud move across the sky without getting wet. But do you know what might be even more transformative? Healthy relationships in adult life, that friendship that doesn't walk away at the first conflict, that love that stays even when you show your shadows, that therapist or mentor who looks at you and sees beyond the wound. These experiences work like live emotional reprogramming, creating new neural pathways where there used to be only fear and distrust. They are living proof that spiritual growth doesn't happen only while meditating in a cave, it also happens face to face, in genuine presence, in the kind of love that finally teaches your brain that not everyone leaves, and that you are, in fact, worthy of affection. The story of someone who grew up without love doesn't have isolated chapters, it's a continuous thread that runs through decades, connecting the frightened child to the confused teenager, and then to the adult who still carries that invisible backpack on their shoulders. In childhood, the brain chose survival over trust, creating a permanent alert system that turns the world into a place too dangerous to fully open up. In adolescence, when everyone else is trying to figure out who they are, this person already carries a painful, ready-made answer, "I'm the one who's not enough." And that belief goes on to shape friendships, first loves, and even the dreams they dare, or don't dare, to dream. When adulthood arrives, the challenges just change their clothes, but the essence stays the same. Regulating emotions becomes a daily battle, intimacy feels like a foreign language you never quite master, and attachment swings between holding on too tightly or letting go too fast. It's as if the person is always one step behind in relationships, trying to learn the rules of a game everyone else already knows how to play, while the soul's purpose whispers that something greater is waiting, but the wound speaks louder, and fear wins the first round every time. And it's exactly this tension between who you want to be and who your patterns force you to be that drains so much of your vital energy. But here's the plot twist that changes everything. An entire lifetime can be a journey of healing, not of condemnation. The final chapters don't have to repeat the first ones. There is space to reconfigure, to break chains, to finally understand that those deep inner changes you feel are not signs that you're falling apart, but signs that, for the first time, you're rebuilding yourself the right way. The Soul Awakening channel exists for exactly this reason, to remind you that awakening has no age limit, no expiration date, and that the activation of consciousness can happen at 20, at 40, or at 60. What truly matters is starting. You know that idea that real trauma is only what you see in movies, explicit abuse, physical violence, literal abandonment? That's one of the biggest lies society tells. Emotional neglect is just as devastating as any obvious trauma, but it's invisible and silent, which makes it even more dangerous, because no one validates it, no one recognizes it, and the victim grows up thinking they have no right to complain, because they had a roof over their head and food on the table. But the heart doesn't live on shelter and food, it needs eye contact, presence, I see you, and you matter. When that's missing, the soul records it as an internal earthquake that permanently shakes every emotional structure. The brain is smart, but not always in a healthy way. It adapts to the emotional environment it finds, even when that environment is cold and barren. So when a child grows up without affection, the brain doesn't develop circuits for growth, trust, and flourishing. It builds circuits for survival, hypervigilance, and self-protection. It's like planting a seed in poor soil. It will grow, yes, but twisted, stunted, always reaching for a sun that never shows up. And the worst part? Those circuits don't just disappear in adulthood. They stay there, running on autopilot, sabotaging your chances of real connection, unless you make a conscious decision to reprogram them through deep spirituality and genuine self-knowledge. Here is a natural, fluent translation in everyday English, clear and emotionally coherent, without sounding robotic or using slang. Here's the raw truth that few people have the courage to say out loud. These adaptations will keep running your life until you stop, face them directly, and choose to do things differently, intentionally, consciously, and courageously. Waiting for time to heal everything doesn't work, because time by itself doesn't heal anything, it only buries things deeper. Healing requires digging, confronting what was avoided, letting yourself cry the tears that were held back, and only then, after that, rebuilding on new foundations. And it's exactly this process of radical rebuilding, this transformation of the deepest wound of your life into your greatest gateway for change, that you need to truly understand. So after everything we've talked about here, the most important question remains, what are you going to do with this now? Because information without action is just entertainment, and I know you didn't come here just to pass the time. You came because something inside you is asking for change, calling for real inner transformation. So be honest with yourself, are you going to keep repeating the same patterns, choosing the same kinds of people, telling yourself the same limiting stories? Or will you have the courage to look at the wounded child still living inside you and say, enough. From today on, I'm writing a different story? Think about it with me, how many times have you sabotaged something good because it felt too good to be true? How many times have you pushed someone away out of fear of being abandoned first? How many nights have you felt lonely even while surrounded by people, because real connection feels like a language you never learned how to speak? These aren't rhetorical questions, they're invitations to stop running and start facing what's there. The spiritual growth you're looking for isn't in an expensive retreat or a magical self-help book, it lives in the daily decision, moment by moment, to choose differently, feel differently, and be differently, even when it hurts deeply, especially when it hurts. And look, I know this isn't easy. I know there will be days when you'll want to go back to autopilot, to old patterns, because at least there you know the terrain. But the Soul Awakening channel exists to remind you, week after week, that you're not alone on this journey of soul rebirth, and that emotional and spiritual healing is something you build by walking, stumbling, getting back up, and walking again. So if this video stirred something inside you, if you felt that moment of recognition, do this. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because what's coming next will keep challenging you, provoking you, and waking you up, until you finally realize that the lack of love in childhood didn't break you. It prepared you to become whole in a way that few people have the courage to be.